Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. Something that needs to be addressed more often, which comes up a lot in cases where I work with families, is the blue wall of silence. Not all, but many police operate under the code of silence. Many police will not tell on their fellow police officer if they're in the wrong for misconduct, crimes, or even small mishaps. This code of silence is well known, but not many people talk about it because, frankly, they're understandably afraid to, especially if the misconduct or crime was inflicted on them. Police officers will perjure themselves in a court of law to protect themselves and their fellow men in blue. In today's story, Laurie Bembenek knew of misconduct happening in the police department where she was employed. She had evidence that she was going to use against a few police officers. Did that have anything to do with why she was accused of murder? Did her husband, a police officer, actually commit this brutal crime and set Laurie up? I'd love to know what conclusion you come up with at the end of this episode. Let's get started. Virginia and Joe Bembenek had a little boy that was born way too soon and didn't survive. They wanted another baby so badly, so they kept trying, and on the 15th of August, 1958, they had a little girl named Laurie. She also had two sisters, one older sister named Colette. Laurie attended Bayview High School. She played the flute in the school band. Laurie was a great student, but she was just not extremely motivated when it came to academics. Her personality kind of fit whoever she was around at the time. If she were around the more intelligent, stereotypical nerdy kids, she would be super smart and bubbly. Around others, she might be quiet and shy, and some she would be a little manipulative. It all depended on the personality of the people she was talking to. By the time she was a senior in high school, she was already finding work as a model. She was stunning. In March of 1980, Laurie joined the police academy. She graduated 6th in her class. She was a trainee at the Milwaukee Police Department, and there was another woman who was also a trainee named Judy Zess. Judy went to have a good time at a rock concert in May of 1980, but the fun came to an end when she was hauled off to jail for smoking pot. Laurie filed a false report when Judy was arrested. Due to that, she was let go from the PD on the 25th of August, 1980. She sued the police department because she found them to be encouraging and involved in sexual discrimination and taking part in illegal deeds. Laurie was shocked by what was happening in the department. She said officers were selling pornography from their cars, accepting oral sex from sex workers, visiting drug hangouts, harassing minorities, and much more. In October, she came into possession of nude photos of male police officers dancing in a public park. She handed them over to Internal Affairs. A U.S. federal attorney, James Morrison, began investigating accusations that the Milwaukee police force was misusing hundreds of thousands of dollars of affirmative action funds and firing minorities on inadequate grounds. Laurie came forward to say that women were being hired and quickly fired to fulfill federal quotas and benefit off of employment equity grants. She was the heart of the investigation. Keep in mind that if she became a serious defendant, the case against the department would fall to pieces. After she was let go from the police department, she started working at a Playboy club in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Laurie and another police officer named Fred Schultz got married on the 29th of January 1981 in Illinois after 3 months of dating. He was a detective at the Milwaukee Police Department. He was previously married to 30-year-old Christine Schultz. The two had been divorced for 3 months when Laurie and Fred got married, but at the time of the incident, Fred and Christine had been divorced for 6 months. Allegedly, Fred was paying alimony and Laurie had a lavish lifestyle, but she was struggling financially to keep up this lifestyle that she desired. Also, allegedly, Fred was one of the men in the nude photos that Laurie had turned over to his superiors. On the 28th of May, 1981, at 2:15 in the morning, someone had tied Christine's hands in front of her with rope, gagged her, and blindfolded her. Then she was shot in the back, and the bullet went through her heart. She was shot with a .38 caliber pistol, and this was no long-range shot either. This appeared to be personal, and by someone that more than likely knew her. The pistol was fired point-blank into her back. A few reports say that the person who did this went across the hallway and put their gloved hand over Christine and Fred's 11-year-old son Sean's mouth and nose and put wire around his neck. Sean woke up, terrified, seeing a figure standing over him. His brother also woke up and jumped out of bed to kick the perpetrator. Their 7-year-old son, Shannon, and Sean walked in on their mom laying face down on her bed with blood everywhere. Sean called Christine's boyfriend at the time, Stuart Honick, who was also a police officer. Stuart called the police department for backup. 4 police officers rushed to the scene and were let in by the 2 little boys who were completely shaken up. Stuart went up the steps, and besides the boys, he was the first to see Christine. He moved her and checked her pulse and realized she was gone. Christine had on a yellow Adidas t-shirt and white underwear. A clothesline sort of cord was wrapped around her hands in front of her, and she had a blue bandana type of scarf wrapped around her head and gagging her mouth. The t-shirt was ripped near the injury, a large bullet hole in the back of her right shoulder. There was no sign of a tussle. Police cut the cord around Christine's hands and covered her body in plastic. They found and removed a brown hair from the calf of her leg. When the report was made, the medical examiner finally got there about 2 hours later. An hour after that, an ambulance came to take Christine off to the police morgue. Fred Schultz has a sketchy past. On July 23, 1975, he was acquitted in a shooting that caused the death of Glendale, Wisconsin policeman George Robert Sasson. George got a phone call while he was off duty about something that was going on at a bar, and even off duty, he went to check it out. He apprehended the person that was causing trouble. Fred Schultz and a few other officers also responded to the same call, even though this bar was out of their jurisdiction. Fred and the other cops opened fire on George and killed him as soon as he simply went to turn around to look at them. They claimed they thought he was the suspect in question. After this murder, Fred and his partner were completely cleared by the Milwaukee County Attorney's Office. That has definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Fred and his partner were cleared of murdering a fellow police officer. These are things we still see today. They took Fred's word for it, and that was the end of it. Fred and Christine had been married for 11 years when they divorced. She had custody of their boys, and they still lived in the same home that she and Fred shared together, and Fred had visitation rights. The marriage had been unstable. Christine made a complaint to her attorney after the divorce, stating that she was afraid of Fred. Christine said that he had threatened her life, saying, "I will blow your head off." He was continually lingering around the house, and she told him to leave. When he finally did, she got the locks changed. She always felt like someone was following her. She didn't know if it had something to do with Stuart, who was known to have a drinking problem, and he definitely had some hostility towards Fred, who he also shared an apartment with at one time. The interwoven lives of all these relationships in this evolving drama was exactly like something you'd see on TV. Before Christine was murdered, that evening she had cooked Stuart a meal. The boys went to bed while Christine and Stuart watched TV for a while, and then she drove him home. When she got back home, Stuart called her and they talked on the phone until 11:30 that night. After that, she went upstairs to her bedroom that was on the second floor to watch more TV. Moments later, she was dead. Laurie was one of the suspects, as was Fred. Fred did pass a lie detector test, which I think we all know they don't really hold much weight anyway, but his alibi, I'll get to that in a little bit. In the end, Laurie was the one charged with the murder, since she had access to the gun that killed Christine. She was arrested on June 24th, 1981. At the time of the trial, the prosecution presented the narrative that Laurie wanted Christine dead and out of Fred's life because she was tired of her husband having to pay Christine. So if Fred didn't have to pay alimony anymore, that would help them out financially, and she could keep up with the nice lifestyle that she wanted to live. Laurie seemed to be the one who would have a motive for killing Christine. However, a lot of people think it's possible that she's not the only one that could have had that same motive. Fred could have easily had that same motive, or possibly some other motive, like knowing Laurie turned that picture of him in. And it's kind of like he was killing two birds with one stone. He already said he was pissed off about having to pay Christine alimony. The prosecution portrayed Laurie basically as a slut. They were calling her a loose woman, which has nothing to do with the crime committed. This brings us back to Laurie working at the Playboy Club. It seemed the prosecution really wanted to portray Laurie as some kind of whore. She even said later, "It's always a negative, if not a sexual image they paint. I was a waitress at the Playboy Club for 3 weeks, but I'll always be known as the Playboy Bunny." The prosecution said she wanted to live a lifestyle that she and Fred could not afford. The prosecution claimed that Laurie was the only one with a motive. Was she really, though? The only solid piece of evidence they had at the time were 2 human hairs that were found at the scene, which was said to match up with ones that were taken from Laurie's hairbrush. The murder weapon was Fred's off-duty gun. 3 weeks after Christine was found murdered in her home, Laurie said, "I was on the police department. I sure wouldn't be stupid enough to use my husband's gun. I can't believe they would even think that." So where was Fred that night? Fred's first alibi he gave for the night of Christine's murder was that he had been investigating a robbery that night with Michael Durfee, his partner. His story would change in the years to come, saying he was actually not on duty at all. He claimed he was out having drinks at a bar. Why didn't he say that in the first alibi if that is the truth? This leaves a lot of people scratching their heads. The prosecution continued to say that Laurie was the only person at their apartment that night who could have been in possession of his gun and the extra key to Christine's home that Fred had secretly made from Sean's house key. Why would you secretly get a copy of her home key? He had been stalking Christine before. At least Christine firmly believed so. Getting a copy of her key is really creepy, especially knowing she did not want him there. There was no sign of a break-in and nothing was stolen. Fred and Christine's 11-year-old son Sean said he saw who did this, and it was not a female, and it definitely wasn't Laurie. Sean said it was a man donned in a mask, a green army jacket, wearing black shoes, and had a very long, red-colored ponytail. Sean said that he heard a noise and woke up to the feeling of something like a covered wire tightening around his throat. As he recalled, a large, gloved hand was moving over his face, covering his mouth, eyes, and nose. He fought and screamed, hearing this person make a deep growling sound. The person who did this ran out and across the hallway. Sean followed Shannon into the hallway, and Shannon saw a man in his mother's room. The man ran past them, and that's when Sean saw him taking the steps 3 and 4 at a time and described what he was wearing. Sean even said that the shoes looked like police shoes. He believed the man also wore a ski mask. When Sean got into his mother's room, she was still hanging on for her life. Today's episode is sponsored by Payer. If you have a business, you need a website. What's the best way to get a website up and running? Choose a website hosting company that makes it simple, like Payer Networks. Payer has over 20 years of experience managing the entire digital ecosystem for thousands of online businesses around the world. Payer makes it easy for you with do-it-yourself website building tools and features, including simple drag-and-drop page designs, and they have guaranteed US-based support technicians ready to help you whenever you need it, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Right now, when you sign up with Payer Networks, you'll receive 1 free month of web hosting. See for yourself how easy it is to build your own website for free. Visit payer.com/free to get your first month of website hosting for free by using the code QUICKSTART. That's PAIR.com/free. Promo code QUICKSTART to get started today. Sean tore her shirt open, attempting to doctor the big hole in her back. He thought the man he saw had actually burst a firecracker in it. He went on to try to help his mother, cloaking his hand in gauze to apply pressure on his mom's bullet hole wound. 7-year-old Shannon said he leaped out of his bed when Sean screamed, saw a man, and kicked him. Shannon said it was a big white man with reddish hair tied into a ponytail, wearing a green jogging suit with yellow stripes running down the sleeve. The man saw the kids and ran from the room, crossed the hallway, and went into their mom's bedroom. Shannon heard a female voice say, "God, please don't do that." Then came a loud noise. He hauled it to his mother's room and saw a man standing over her bed. The man took off past him and down the steps. Some reports say 12 area residents, including 2 police officers, had seen a man matching the boy's description, jogging in the neighborhood a few weeks before the murder. He had reddish-brown hair and a ponytail and was wearing a green jogging suit. He was seen carrying a blue bandana, similar to the one used to gag the victim. 2 nurses at a nursing home 1 mile from the scene had observed something strange in the early morning hours of May 28th. They had seen someone lying in the parking lot, had called the police, and when they came back outside around 2:50 a.m., they observed a man with reddish-brown hair and a green jogging suit standing in the bushes. According to Crime Library, Fred Schultz was on duty that night. He went to the scene of the crime. He went on to call his new wife, 21-year-old Laurie Bembenek, at 2:40 in the morning, but the line was busy. She had been packing to move to a smaller apartment that evening and had planned to go out with her friend Judy Zess, but the date had been canceled. Fred tried calling her again. At this time, she picked up the phone, and it sounded to him as if she had just woken up. He took his partner, Detective Michael Durfee, to his apartment, 16 blocks away, and felt the hood of her car in the presence of the other officer, and then examined his off-duty .38 pistol. Michael Durfee smelled the gun and looked it over, determining that it had not been fired that night, nor recently cleaned. There was dust on the weapon. This eliminated it as a murder weapon. Fred asked Laurie to come with him to identify Christine, and took the off-duty pistol with him in a briefcase. Michael left them as Fred went into a private meeting with his superiors and left to write his report, but not before mentioning that the gun was in the briefcase. No one there recorded the serial number, nor recorded the fact or content of the meeting. So in retrospect, it could never be proven that such a meeting even took place. At 4 a.m, 2 detectives came to Laurie and Fred's apartment to ask if she owned a gun or a green jogging suit. They also asked about Stuart and Fred. She told them that she had no such jogging suit and never owned one of that color. Chris Radish in Run Baby Run described the situation with Laurie. Quote, "She was one of those radical women's libbers, the kind of women who thought females deserved an equal chance. She was also one of the most beautiful cops the department had ever seen. She was tall, with a great set of legs, sky blue eyes, long, slender figure, and a head of thick blonde hair. She was gone but never forgotten. She had been booted out of the department because of some minor problem, and Chief Breyer smiled when he learned of her connection with the Schultz murder. The police department was no place for women. Let them stay home. These women needed to be taught a lesson." End quote. The prosecution brought witnesses in that successfully made Laurie seem very guilty in the jury's eyes. One witness alleged that Laurie tried to give him money to kill Christine. Others said that Laurie did own a jogging suit, a green one, that sounded similar to the one Sean had talked about. The ponytail that Sean mentioned was actually a wig. Laurie, possibly, or someone else, flushed the wig down a toilet. Not at Christine's house, but at Laurie and Fred's apartment. At least, it was found in a drain connected to their neighboring apartment, and they pinned it on Laurie. The wig matched fibers that were found at the crime scene. A witness from a boutique said that Laurie did buy that wig before the murder. The jury found Laurie guilty of murder in the first degree in March of 1982. She was then sentenced to life. After she was found guilty and was sentenced, Fred not only filed for divorce after standing up for her and standing by her, but he was stating to the public that his beliefs had changed, and he now felt that she was definitely guilty. Laurie tried to appeal her conviction 3 times, citing errors in the way that the police handled key evidence. Judy Zess was even one of the prosecution's witnesses, but as Laurie tried pointing out in her appeals, Judy withdrew her testimony because she said she was coerced and pressured into her witness statements. Laurie's appeals were all denied. When Laurie was let go at the police department, she made the claims that there was some serious corruption going on, and she was a major witness in the federal investigation. Could this have been a setup by Fred Schultz? Laurie has always maintained her innocence. She and the people that rallied behind her feel that it's likely the Milwaukee cops could have worked with Fred to concoct this plan for someone to kill Christine and make it appear that Laurie was the one who did it. Even Fred himself could have done this. One person that people suspect could have done this for Fred Schultz was Frederick Horenberger. He had worked with Fred for a little bit on a renovation project, a career criminal who was also the ex-boyfriend of Judy Zess. Coincidentally, a few weeks before Christine was killed, Frederick had burglarized and physically attacked Judy. He was in a disguise when he did so. Eventually, he went on to serve 10 years for doing that. While he was serving his time, there were tons of affidavits which stated that Frederick was bragging to his fellow prisoners about killing Christine and others. Talking to inmates about Christine, he allegedly said, quote, "I killed the bitch." Of course, he denied it all, saying he had no part in her murder. He denied these claims until he completed suicide after he was involved in a burglary, holding a hostage and a standoff in November of 1991. More questions started to arise when the medical examiner in this case, Dr. Elaine Samuels, performed the autopsy initially, saying the hairs recovered from the scene of the murder were of the victim and no one else. After that, a hair analyst by the name of Diane Hansen stepped in. She was employed at a crime lab in Madison, Wisconsin. She declared that 2 of those hairs matched the hairs in Laurie's hairbrush. That is what we found out during the trial. Dr. Elaine Samuels was not happy about this, and she told the Toronto Star in 1991, quote, "I recovered no blonde or red hairs of any length or texture. 2 of the hairs I recovered from the body were brown and grossly identical to the hair of the victim. I do not like to suggest that evidence was altered in any way, but I can find no logical explanation for what amounted to the mysterious appearance of blonde hair in an envelope that contained no such hair at the time it was sealed by me." End quote. Someone else also confessed to owning a brownish red wig, Judy Zess. Fred and Laurie lived in an apartment that shared drainage pipes with another apartment. The shared drain pipe is where this wig was found that matched some of the hairs on Christine's body. The lady that shared the drainage with Fred and Laurie testified that Judy Zess knocked on her door and asked to use her restroom. She let Judy in to use the bathroom, and not long after that, the pipes were clogged. Laurie was highly respected by fellow inmates in prison, and she was said to be the model prisoner. She received her bachelor's from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, and she helped create a prisoner's newspaper. While she was in prison, there was a man she happened to meet named Dominic. He would come to the prison to visit his brother, and when he met Laurie, they hit it off and eventually got engaged. Laurie maintained her innocence. She didn't feel she was done right by authorities at all. She said everything they said and did was so wrong, and she just wanted to see her parents again. In interviews that she has done after all of this, she had clearly been through a lot. Sometimes you can definitely tell when people are putting on a show, and I do have to say that Laurie seemed genuinely upset, and she seemed so beaten down by what had happened to her. The interviewer asked her to rate her life on a scale of 1 to 10. She painfully says 2. She was going through a lot mentally and emotionally when she got engaged to Dominic. On July 15, 1990, Dominic helped her escape prison. After this, the publicity that encompassed her case was fired back up again. She hated this nickname, but people called her Bambi after the escape. There was even a song written about Laurie and shirts that were sold that said "Run, Bambi, Run." Laurie said that she and Dominic drove and drove until they couldn't anymore. They ended up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. They went unnoticed for 3 months until someone saw that she was on the show America's Most Wanted. When I shop for unique novelties and gifts, I always keep an eye out for something a little out of the ordinary. That's why I shop at Batwings and Butterflies. Batwings and Butterflies is an independent creator-owned and operated boutique of handmade knit creations that run the gamut from the wild side to the dark side. There you'll find knit toys and stuffies like baby Baphomets, voodoo dolls, giant tarantulas, and you can custom order whatever you would like her to make. She has household knits like blankets, doilies, and water pipe cozies, and so much more. Every item is an original work of art handmade with love by a talented artisan. Order your one-of-a-kind creation today. Find Batwings and Butterflies at batwingsandbutterflies.bigcartel, BIGCARTEL.com. That's batwingsandbutterflies.bigcartel.com. You can also contact the creator, Bria, on Instagram at batwingsandbutterflies. I love all of her products, but my favorites are the huge knit stuffies that you can snuggle and cuddle up with while you listen to a true crime or another dark podcast from the Darkcast Network. So go shop around at batwingsandbutterflies.bigcartel.com. She was working as a waitress, and she was arrested. Dominic had to serve a year for his involvement of Laurie's escape. Laurie said the windows were usually open at the prison, just wide enough to slide your arm through, and they were always secure where you couldn't get them open any further than that. One day the window wasn't locked, and she took that opportunity to jump out. She said she ran through the woods and didn't stop running. After she was apprehended, she wanted refugee status in Canada, on the claims that she was being unfairly persecuted, going on to say that there was a conspiracy going on between the justice system and the law enforcement in Wisconsin. The Canadian government sympathized with Laurie. Before they released her back to Milwaukee authorities, a deal was made that the officials had to conduct a judicial review of her case. Even though this review didn't bring forth any evidence of corruption by the police force or prosecutors, because, as we know, it's hard enough to get justice when police or anyone working in the system does wrong with evidence due to people having the ability to record things on their phones. But at this time, all she had was her word against the police and people in the justice system. If she was right all along, like many cases before and after hers, if there's no proof, there's really not a lot of hope. So there's no evidence of crimes committed there, but there were reportedly 7 detailed police mishaps that were major during the investigation. Due to this, Laurie had the right to have a brand new trial. She was terrified and pleaded no contest to second-degree murder. That would give her a lighter sentence that transferred over to time served. In November of 1992, she was finally free after serving over 10 years. After prison, she did write a book called Woman on Trial. She did go through a lot of personal struggles and legal issues, as well as getting arrested again for being in possession of marijuana. She filed for bankruptcy. Sadly, Laurie became an alcoholic, and due to that, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and had many health issues. In 1994, she legally got rid of the last name Schultz and changed it back to Bembenek. In 1996, Laurie said, quote, "I'm tired of being Laurie Bembenek. Any face would do," end quote. She had to deal with a lot of publicity after prison. She was getting offers to ride around in limousines, being treated like a big-time celebrity. She said it didn't matter that people recognized her, that it wasn't making her any money. As she mentioned in the interview I watched, she cared about her parents so much, and they truly meant the world to her. In 1996, she was able to move to Washington State, where her retired parents lived in Vancouver. She was finally able to be close to them again. She said that she was leaving friends behind, which was kind of sad, but that she had to leave. She even met her future husband, Marty Carson. He was a U.S. Forest Service employee. Marty was a super supportive husband and was able to get her to start painting as a form of therapy because she was so passionate about it, and he kept encouraging her. She grew up painting, and in 1992 she had her art on display at UW-Milwaukee. Marty even made Laurie her own studio, and she was so happy to get back into painting. She was recovering slowly, and after a few years she had painted about 30-something paintings that were on display at the local art gallery. Unfortunately, the gallery burned down. The fire was some kind of freak accident. It wasn't arson, but obviously, all of her paintings were now nothing but ashes. In 2002, Laurie agreed to be on the Dr. Phil show, and she was staying in an apartment as she waited. She said that the handlers for the Dr. Phil show were keeping her locked up in this space and not treating her well. I can only imagine that this brought back the feeling of being in prison without freedom. She jumped from the second-story window of the apartment and broke her leg. It was so severe that she had to have her leg amputated, and she lived the rest of her life with a prosthetic leg from her knee down. Laurie spent her whole life while she was in prison and when she was out, fighting to prove that she never murdered Christine. The Wisconsin Supreme Court would never overturn her plea of no contest. They said that a no contest plea could never be revoked. In 2008, Laurie's lawyer presented evidence to the U.S. Supreme Court that was never heard in the trial. Laurie filed a petition to get her second murder conviction reversed. The evidence that was found only fueled the fire of what so many had thought likely happened. The ballistics test did show that the bullets belonged to Fred Schultz's gun, but not only that, there was male DNA on Christine's body, and she had been sexually assaulted. That paired with the son saying he saw a masked male. Even though this evidence that would obviously prove that it was a man who was there, her appeal was denied in June of 2008. Her petition was basically to clear up whether people who pled guilty or no contest to get their sentences reduced because they don't want to spend the rest of their lives in prison for something they didn't do, that they would have the chance to get new evidence reviewed. They completely shut this down. In 2008, Laurie had promised her father on his deathbed that one day the family name would be cleared. In 2010, it was reported that Laurie had been suffering from liver and kidney failure. She fought to prove her innocence until her dying day on November 20th, 2010. She passed away in Portland, Oregon, in a hospice care facility at the age of 52. In the beginning, I told you guys that she has a sister named Colette. Colette has always said that her sister was innocent, but that she was a troubled person. In 2003, Colette said, quote, "We were just raised differently. When Laurie was born, we all danced around and accommodated the baby that lived and survived. She was raised with indulgence. It became an emotional problem. Laurie has this bizarre charisma, but she needs help." End quote. Laurie's attorney, Mary, stated in 2010 that just because Laurie wasn't here anymore, that wasn't going to stop the effort to win a pardon for her. Mary said, quote, "It's her dying wish that she be pardoned. Based upon the evidence that we have gathered, it's clearly a case of wrongful conviction." End quote. She went on to say that she was told by the pardon board, death in no way hinders a pardon from being given. To this day, Mary is still seeking that pardon for Laurie Bembenek. Do you believe that this was a case of wrongful conviction, or do you believe that Laurie is guilty? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and as always, stay safe and take care. I love ya.